Georgia is a beautiful state here in the South with both big cities and small towns, beautiful lakes and suburban areas, and plenty of great weather. As a lifelong resident of Georgia, I guess you could say that I am jaded when it comes to Georgia's pros and cons, since I have been here my whole life. I'm Sarah Maslowski with KeyPoint Homes Group, a local real estate team here in the Northeast Metro Atlanta area, and we've got clients from all over the country relocating to our great state. Since a majority of my clients are coming from other areas of the country, I am always surprised by what the feedback about what is uniquely different here in Georgia. So, what has shocked new residents about moving to Georgia? One of the biggest comments we have gotten lately is that the weather is not as hot as they expected it to be, which is honestly really surprising to me since we have been having kind of like low 90s temperatures recently. We have awesome clients who are moving here from just outside of Boise, Idaho, and I was so shocked to hear that their weather is essentially one extreme or the other. Extremely hot and dry summer, and then extremely cold and snowy winter. She said that she was used to the heat and looking forward to not having to shovel snow ever again, and was excited that we actually experience a fall and a spring. Our Floridian clients now, they always laugh when we complain about the heat and the humidity, and they tell us that this is nothing compared to what they are used to being in Florida. A California native also told us that she wasn't bothered by the 95-degree day either, since it was going to be back in California like 115 degrees where she's from. One of our other clients is from Utah, and she was so nervous about the humidity before moving out here, and I asked her the other day what she thought of it now that we are kind of like in the hot and sticky days of summer. And she said that it was not nearly as bad as she was anticipating it to be. And she said that, the moisture was actually doing wonders for her skin compared to the dry air in Utah. In my opinion, we have fantastic weather here since we get to experience all 4 seasons and we don't have anything too extreme. And apparently all of this heat and humidity is not as bad as it's cracked up to be. Another thing that we hear that clients are surprised to find out about is how many deer we have here and all the different wildlife. We definitely have deer. Even if you live in a busy town like Alpharetta, you're going to see deer, and at some point or another, they're likely going to be in your backyard. Especially if you are in an area around the lake or somewhere more rural, there will be deer. Now, they might sneak into your backyard and eat all of your flowers and anything else that you were trying to grow. Trust me, our yard is like barren. Now, even if you don't actually see the deer, but if you wake up and you notice that all of the blooms on your flowers are gone and your tomato plants are gone, that's why. We also have lots of rabbits, and you'll see the occasional opossum, raccoon, squirrels galore, and my favorite that I discovered when we lived up here, or moved up here rather, is groundhogs. There's groundhogs everywhere, and you see them on the side of the road, and I think they're super cute. Never seen one in my yard, but they're always on the side of the road. Now, the rabbits are going to eat your flowers too, so don't be surprised. There are some kind of plants that kind of deter both rabbits and deer, and they're less drawn to those, but they pretty much eat everything, it seems. Now, something that is way more common here in Georgia that many people are surprised to find out about is termites. Since Georgia is such a damp state and our houses are framed in wood, many people experience termite damage at one point or another. We will always have a home you purchase inspected for termites, and we recommend that you have a pest control company regularly inspect to avoid any issues. And you can get a termite bond and put that in place. It's always best practice. People do, however, think we are going to have an extreme amount of snakes and bugs. And I guess because of the mountains or the fact that it's such a damp state, but then they move here and they realize it's not that many bugs. And when it comes to snakes, yes, there are snakes here, but in my house, we back up to the woods. We've been here 8 years now. I've never seen a snake. Now, that's not to say that you're not going to see them, but it's just not as common and prevalent as what you think they're going to be. Now, we do have loud cicadas, but you will hear them more than you will see them. And I'm not going to lie, Now, when it comes to mosquitoes, I personally do not think they're nearly as bad as what they are in South Georgia and Florida. To me, they're much more milder here. Now, going back to snakes, if you do happen to run into a snake, we usually have garden snakes or water snakes, meaning that they aren't really that dangerous. We often hear from clients how surprised they are to find out that Georgia is lush and green. People always mention that they are surprised about how many trees there are and that they are everywhere you go. Everywhere you go, there are trees. Georgia is very lush and green in the summer. However, in the winter, people are really surprised because it looks like the grass is dead, because it is kind of turns like a brownish, yellowish tan color. And people get worried that it's died. This is because the grass has gone dormant, and it's a very common type of grass here, and that is called Bermuda. And it's basically a type of grass that stands up to the heat and the humidity really well, which is obviously essential with our hot summers, and it goes dormant in the winter. And this is when you're going to notice that the light tan color will kind of take over. But have no fear, it will perk right back up in the spring, and it's going to go back to that bright green of what you're used to. Sometimes yard enthusiasts will dig up the yard and replace it with fescue, which is a type of grass that doesn't go dormant, so it stays green all year long, but it isn't as susceptible to the heat. So just know that if you're going to plant that type of grass, you are going to have to water it constantly in the summer to keep up from the yard from actually dying. It's not nearly as sturdy as Bermuda, which is why Bermuda is the most common type of grass that you're going to see here. So you can plant winter rye as well if you're really just missing that spring green. Exciting stuff, right? So along with the trees and the lush greenery, people are often surprised to find out just how hilly Georgia is. Now, if you go down to South Georgia, that's not the case. It's incredibly flat down there. But if you have seen any of my videos on the differences between North and South Georgia, you'll know that they're two kind of like completely different worlds. Here in North Georgia, however, you are going to find that not everything is flat. And perhaps that is because we sit at the base of the North Georgia mountains. And it's kind of funny to me how surprised people are by that fact, since we are so close to the mountains. Especially if you are on the west side of the lake, like North Cumming and Dawsonville, you're going to find a lot more sloped yards because you're so close to the base of the mountains. This also means that you will find a lot of steep driveways here in North Georgia because of the geography of the land. You can still find semi-sloped and flat driveways, but it's not uncommon to find more steep driveways. Another thing that we find that clients are surprised to find out is that if you're looking for a home on a basement, you're going to have a sloped yard. They go hand in hand. You cannot have a basement home on a flat yard. And the reason for this is that all of our basements are on a sloped lot and they're walkout basements. So you're going to have windows and you actually need a hill to build that house on. So just know that if you're looking for a house on a basement, you are going to have a little bit of a sloped yard, some more so than others. One thing I hear mixed reviews on is how close or far away houses are here. People from certain parts of California and Florida will always say how surprised they are that the lots are so spacious and how big the yards are. Then you have people who are coming from places like New York and Utah that say, man, they really pack these in tight. This clearly comes down to whether you are currently living in a city or a more rural area, and that can vary here depending upon where you are looking for sure. You will find more space in areas like Jefferson, Monroe, parts of Gainesville, and Dawsonville, but there are some specific neighborhoods, especially ones that were built more recently, that are very close together. If you want to have a pretty, kind of like sizable lot, meaning more than in 1 acre, that is really going to limit where you need to focus your search area on. If that is the case, we are going to be looking for more eastern towns like Monroe and Jefferson and Winder, or again on the west side of the lake in some parts of Cumming and Dawsonville. Another area that you can look is in North Gainesville, but one thing that you want to keep in mind is that any area near the lake, the land isn't necessarily going to be perfectly flat. So depending upon what your goal is for the land, that's something that you are going to want to keep in mind. If the plan is to build another structure or building, that might be a challenge. But if you just want space to roam around and you want that privacy, that can be more achievable. Bigger acreage can also be found over in areas like Canton and Milton, but it's going to come with a higher price tag. Another thing that we get from Floridians is that they are surprised by the lack of pools that we have here. This again goes back to Georgia not being a super flat area, so many backyards just aren't set up for having a pool. Also, another huge hurdle is septic tanks. If you have over half of an acre, your lot is most likely going to have a septic tank, which means that there will be kind of like a big chunk of your yard that is taken up by the tank itself and then the drain field lines. If you are looking to put in a pool, you would most likely be looking for at least half of an acre or more to have room for the size of pool that you want to put in. So it's kind of like a double-edged sword. Of course, it is still possible. It just all depends on where the tank is and the drain field lines are. And sometimes you can even move the tank and the drain field lines to another location. Sometimes you also will find that these are already on the side of the yard or even the front of the yard. So it's definitely something that is not totally out of the realm of possibility to have a pool. We just have to be aware of this, and we have to do a little bit more digging. Now, another thing when it comes to pools is I think a lot of people don't put pools in their backyard because a lot of the houses that you're going to be looking for are going to be already in a swim tennis community. So most people just don't see the reason to have the expense of paying for one when the neighborhood already has one that you can take advantage of. I recently got a comment from someone who said they were located in Los Angeles, and they said they were shocked at how clean the streets are here and how they have been to other cities in the past, and they were just surprised at how clean of a state Georgia is. Now, again, this is definitely more so a city versus suburb type thing because, of course, you can go into Atlanta and you're going to find, some areas are not so clean as others. But for the most part, the suburbs are going to have to be pretty clean. Now, one thing is that you will find houses that will have kind of like old cars parked out front, the lawnmower that died 10 years ago and no one, thought to move it. And, just kind of junky yards or old structures that look like they're kind of abandoned, like old farm buildings. And that's definitely not out of the realm of possibility. So you're going to see that whenever you drive around. And sometimes I have clients ask me, hey, that's just kind of like outside of the neighborhood or on the way to the neighborhood. Is that going to detract from the value of our house? And the answer to that is no. And this is just kind of how it is here in Georgia, especially the more rural suburbs that you go. It's way more common, and it's really something that, frankly, I don't even notice at all. And so it's surprising to me when I have clients that point that out because it's like, oh, yeah, that's there. But you just see it all the time, so it just kind of becomes part of the everyday backdrop. If you're watching this and you're thinking about making a move to Georgia or you already have, I'm curious to know, please let me know in the comments below, what did you find surprising or shocking about your move here to Georgia? Of course, if you're thinking about making a move, I and my team would love to be your real estate agent. You can reach out and find my information directly below this video. And of course, if you're thinking about making a move to Georgia and you haven't watched this video yet, make sure you check it out.